word that has been proclaimed to you. Alleluia, 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 alleluia.
My friends, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and likewise all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 have been married to her." Jesus said to them, "The children of this age marry and remarry, but those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are children of God because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise, even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called out, 'Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning. Hope you enjoyed your extra hour of sleep. There seems to be a couple more people this morning. That's a good thing. A couple of weeks ago, I had a unique honor, which is truly that, of burying my great uncle in the Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. My great uncle was 94 and lived a great life, and he was also a World War II vet. But he was buried in Section 60 of Arlington Cemetery, and being part of this process from the planning to the actual execution of the funeral ceremony was like none other that I have ever been part of. But this particular section of the cemetery is not the newest section, but one of the more new sections. Section 60 is where many of the Afghan and Iraq veterans who were killed in the line of duty in recent years have been buried. Why I bring this up this morning is because we know Arlington National Cemetery as hallowed ground, a hallowed ground of remembrance and of prayer and of reflection. For all who are buried there gave the ultimate gift that they could ever give, the gift of their life for their brothers and sisters and for their countries, for their country. And they indeed are heroes. But something unique about this section, something that Arlington National Cemetery officials are still beginning to grapple with of how to handle this. And that is on many special holidays throughout the year, Veterans Day, Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, that many of the family members of these Iraqi and Afghan veterans who have passed away gather at this Section 60 around their loved ones' graves. They gather to remember and to pray, but they also gather to celebrate a life that has been lived, to celebrate a lasting legacy. These family members, these friends are beginning to come together to form a new family out of death, to bring new life for each other and to each other. In essence, they are treating death as a true celebration, a celebration of new life. The month of November throughout the church, in the church throughout the world, is a month of remembrance as well. Yes, of remembrance and prayer for our deceased brothers and sisters who have gone, but also a time of celebration, a time to remember those who have gone before us now are no longer suffering, even though there is a void at the dinner table and a void in our own hearts as well. Going back to the 2nd century is the earliest recollection that the church has formally remembered the dead in the month of November. And we pray for, in a special way, those poor souls who are waiting for the total purification in the heavenly vision of God, who are waiting in purgatory. But more importantly, what this lesson from Arlington, and indeed what we celebrate in the month of November as a church, teach us is that if we have faith, not even death has the last say. No matter what, faith carries us onward. Yes, it is true that some of us are sitting here this morning dealing with the sting of the loss of a loved one. Yes, it is true that nothing will fill their physical void because there is no longer that physical presence here. But what we also know as true as Christian believers is that faith gives us hope, and hope carries us onward, that one day we will see our loved ones again in that heavenly glory, God willing. The Sadducees in this morning's gospel couldn't see this understanding of resurrection because they could not see beyond themselves, their own law, their own understanding of life, and yes, even their very selves, beyond their own righteousness. Jesus reached through themselves, himself, to point out the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that Jesus will always meet us on our terms, at our moment, and in our life, in our reality, because he knows our life and our reality. The very gospel calls us to life, and we are challenged by the life of Christ to do two things from this morning's gospel. We are called first not to be the Sadducees. We are called to look beyond ourselves, which means sometimes beyond our own personal opinions, beyond even our own personal understanding of belief, to see the bigger picture that is offered. But the second lesson that we hear of this morning's gospel is to recognize his life and who we serve. When we recognize that it is from his life that we have the gift of life, it is then that we are able to serve him in return by how we live our life. How many times have we felt in the last week that life is tough, that it's hard to go on, it's hard to understand why this happens, why that happens, why this person died, why that person's suffering with cancer, why my children aren't going to church, etc., etc., etc. We deal with these questions of life. But Jesus gives us hope in this morning's gospel and calls us to look beyond ourselves to see the bigger picture, and helps us to recognize that he is the God of life, not of death, of life that will transcend the present world's struggles to the heavenly glory that awaits us all. We too are reminded in this morning's gospel that life is a gift, a precious gift, a gift that is meant to be protected, a gift that is meant to be lived. I think it's rather providential that we hear this set of readings at the beginning of November when remembering the dead, but also as we as a country prepare to elect a new leader, when we see opportunity and a future that awaits us, and that we are also reminded that our life is meant to be lived, and that life is meant to be protected. We are reminded that all of our life is governed by the new life that is offered by Jesus Christ. And so too, the same lesson for this morning's gospel applies to all of us as believers as we prepare for Tuesday. And that is, sometimes we are called to look beyond ourselves and our own personal opinions to see the bigger picture of what we are called to stand for as believers. But the second is to pray and to recognize that it is his life that guides us onward, and it is his life that allows us to live. We must always stand for life so that others can live. And so, my friends, as we go forward from this Sunday into whatever happens 48 hours from now, into this month of November and beyond, we are reminded at all times to look beyond ourselves, to recognize his life, and to live our life to the fullest, as it is a gift to be meant to share it with others. It is then that we recognize that we worship a God who is of life and not a God of death.